All right, you guys, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. As you know, this is the number one place to discover the people, the ideas, and the strategies that are helping entrepreneurs build lives and businesses that thrive through uncertainty. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've ever wondered what happens when the career you've maybe spent decades building suddenly disappears, then I think you are definitely going to enjoy this episode. And just make sure you are subscribed to the Online Prosperity Show so that you do not miss out on any of the episodes that we have lined up for you. Now, today I'm a little bit excited and a little bit starstruck. Okay, you will soon discover why. Because today we're joined by none other than Andy Fankhauser. Now, Andy, how are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much, Prosper. It's an honor and super gratitude to be here today, my good sir. So thank you.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I'm literally shaking in my boots right now, Andy. I've been talking to you a little bit earlier on, but we want to keep that so that the viewer will then get to understand the gravity of the person that we've got in front of us. All right. So, Andy is the founder and CEO of Aqua Luxury Consulting, and he's also the creator of Micro Expo My City, a man whose greatest business breakthrough began the moment he stopped trying to control everything. And it's one of those moments that so many of us are grappling with and trying to figure out. Because many people that are probably watching this right now, they're trying to build a business. They're obviously trying to support families. They're also trying to create financial security. And yet, deep down, they're just wondering what happens if everything that I've built suddenly just disappears just like that. And you know, I think both I and Andy know exactly what that feels like. But this is Andy's episode, so we're gonna be hearing a lot more from him about how that happened. Because after spending about 20 or so years in corporate life, the career that he had actually relied upon just came to an unexpected end. And instead of finding another comfortable job, he found something much bigger. And it was a completely different purpose. So today we're going to be discovering how losing control actually became his greatest gift, and we'll explore, how his faith worked or did not work for him, his business, financial resilience, and also how community can actually be the strongest thing that you might have as a person. And I can't wait to jump in and hear all about it. Now, Andy, how do I get my autograph signed? Because like we
Hey, I got a pen and paper right here. I'll mail it right after we're done with the episode. But don't put me up on that pedestal too quick. I was only an extra in the movie with Jude Law. I was in the scene for about 45 seconds. It's the back of my head, but it's my one little claim to fame. I've been in a couple other shows and things like that, TV shows, but for $67.42, nowhere near a top tier A lister celebrity. But my ego thanks you. I appreciate that greatly. But no,
absolutely. Well,
seriously, great to be here from Southern California, my good sir. From one hemisphere to another. Thank you for this opportunity.
too good, too good. Well, you do know there are some starving artists out there. You can actually be taxed for having been or rendered, acting services. So, in my eyes, and for the show now,
Right.
you do have a brush with a celebrity. But obviously, besides that, before Aqua Luxury
Mhm.
Consulting, you spent about 20 years in, corporate. Tell us a little bit about that journey and who we would have met in the corridors of that corporate world.
Sure. So, myself, as with probably many of your listeners, I'm of the millennial generation. I guess you could say 1983. Myself turning 43 here soon. So, wherever that 81 to 88, 89 range, you get the idea. The point is that we are one of the last generations where we grew up with the mentality and the traditions that you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a degree, you graduate, you get a job, you hold it down for 20, 30 years. Maybe you retire in mid 60s if you're lucky, and you live out the rest of your life as much as there is left in hopefully the way that you want, with the financials to back it up with. That was what we were bred with. We're ingrained, like every day. I am extremely grateful, just to say right off the bat, I had some really great parents that instilled some fantastic character points in me growing up, right? But here's where, to your question, what do you do when all that collapses? We were never taught what to do. You okay, one job ends, you go to the next one. Okay, that one ends, you go to the next one. You try to progress, you get promoted or whatever have you, right? That's the idea. But no one ever sat down and say, hey, if the entire corporate or career that you have planned to support you, your family, and everything else comes to a screeching halt and you don't get another job, here's what you do. That never happened. That conversation never happened. Now, a little background on me. I graduated 2008 here out of the University of Missouri St. Louis, UMSL, right? So for your listeners and viewers here, you might remember that 2008 was the beginning of the economic collapse around the world. So as I was trying to get into the world to work, the world was saying, no, not today, and probably not tomorrow either, Andy. But guess what? We'll keep your resume on file for any future opportunities, and we appreciate you applying. Ouch, right? So my first entrance into the real world started with, yeah, we thank you, but we're reevaluating our HR needs at this point in time. Kind of hurt. Luckily, as life does, we move on, we migrate, we get over it, and get another opportunity. I started my banking career in about 2009 or so, right before I got married in 2010. And from about 2009 to 2012, 13 or so, I was in the banking industry. I was that person that people who were older than I, much more successful, would come in and say, hey, Andy, I got parents, I got in-laws, I got put up in a nursing home. That's 20 grand a month. I have a child who's going off to 150,000 a year college, and I haven't gotten a pay raise in 3 years. Andy, how can you help? Well, again, 08, 9, 10, 11, a little bit, I guess you could also say, found home values not to the point that people could leverage, right? And I'm not going to go down that hole. For those that know that having like a home equity line of credit or any home equity loan just wasn't happening. The values weren't there, right? The housing market collapsed, right? To name specifically. So I had to sit with these people through their financial struggle and try to come up with solutions, alternatives, support, encouragement at the very least, to say, hey, look, I understand that you're going through this. These are the options that we have. These are the parameters that we do these options on. As long as you fit these parameters, we could probably move forward, right? It's the banking system. If it's anything, it's rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. As long as you stay within that framework, life works, right? Now, here's where things get really interesting. So fast forward to 2020. I'm 2 kids in. I'm in Southern California, Orange County, right? My wife and I are expecting a third, and he was born in 2020. Now, obviously, 9 months prior to that, so let's say March of 2020, he was born. 9 months prior, 2019, very unfortunately and very tragic, both my father and my father-in-law passed away, right? So for those that have gone through the loss of a loved one, a family member, and so on, especially a father figure or a mother figure, it's not something you just, okay, a day or two or whatever, like it hurts, especially having 2 major father figures die within 5 months of each other. And then you have to turn around and give birth to a son, right? Like extreme high, extreme low. But what else happened in 2020? COVID. So now I'm bringing a new baby. My wife and I bringing our 3rd child into the world. About 2 weeks before COVID hit us hard in Southern California, I believe we were one of the last regions in the world to actually go into quarantine. And then pulling my son, my first child, my son from first grade, and then my daughter from daycare. So now we have a newborn with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? Not exactly the third kid transition we were looking at, but that's not the best part or the worst part, if you want to think of it that way. Still working in the banking industry, I actually had to shorten my paternity leave so I could keep my job. My 6 weeks that I planned to be at home to support my wife and the new child, as it's kind of a tradition here in the United States, you take time off, paid, new child sort of thing, paternity leave. I wasn't sure if I was going to be employed still. So I actually said, I'm going to go back to work early to keep my job, to keep providing. And luckily they let me have it. It was there. However, what I met with here, Prosper, is something I never had any training for, never figured I'd ever be a part of, global pandemic, right? Whoever thought, hey, look back in my lifetime, I experienced 2 global pandemic. That's not something that you would want, one, or ever experienced 2. But that global pandemic, Prosper, is what brought me into Aqua Luxury Consulting. And what that did is sit me down or put me in position across from people who handed me more death certificates than I really want to talk about, of their husband, their wife, their brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor, child. And I did have a few parents bring in their child's death certificate due to the pandemic. Say, hey, Andy, this is my loved one. This is my life. This is who I bled for, who I cried with, who I sacrificed with. He or she controlled, paid for, owned the business, paid the mortgage. They did everything, Andy. I don't know what to do. How can you help? In a time where being socially distant, right? That 6-foot, 10-foot rule, or you were behind walls of plastic or wherever else, in a time of that stress, but you add emotional turmoil on top of it, it's very hard to express empathy and sympathy to somebody like that. You want to hug them. You want to say it's going to be all right. You want to give them your box of tissues because they're crying at your desk, and you can't do any of that. And you have to be as human as you can while being as distant as you can physically. It's hard. And sitting with those family members and saying, yeah, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. And for your viewers, for those people, Prosper, for your viewers that are seeing this, if they ever lost someone during that time, my heart goes out to them. It was rough saying goodbye to your grandparents because they're stuck in a nursing home. And the only way to do that is because the nurse went by with their FaceTime and actually let them say goodbye. Like, it's heart-wrenching, right? A little bit of a trigger. I'm not trying to PTSD anybody right now, but stay with me here. I'm going to share something really important with you. So when I sat with these people who handed me death certificates of the people that they loved, and they say, hey, Andy, they had a business, very successful, 15, 20 years. They had an office nearby. I've been to it a couple times, not really sure who they serviced or how they did what they did. But they had a business account here, Andy. How can you help? Sure, let's look it up. Yep, sure enough. 15-year business, extremely successful, mid 6 figures, 250, 300, $500,000 balances, couple of accounts, couple corporate credit cards. Yep, they had an office nearby that was $4,000 a month, so on and so forth, right? The company revenue paid for the mortgage. The company revenue paid for the car payment. Company revenue paid for their kids' college. And I'd have to turn to them and be like, yeah, they did. They were extremely successful, but I can't give you any of that money. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to your loved one who passed. It's the company's money. And it's only going to stay here until you go through a probate process. It's a legal process here in the United States that you have to apply to through a judge to be assigned by a court designated person that you and you alone are the only authorized personnel to take over that company or those assets, wherever they happen to be, right? If taking over a company from a deceased loved one, and it's not easy, by the way, probate in a good year is probably 12 months without a lawyer, 12 to 18 months, I'd say, probably easy without a lawyer, right? Depending on what system you're in. But it's not easy, and it's not short, and it's not cheap. So by the time you get to the end of the process, the company's money, the balances are dwindling because no one's reached out to any clients, customers, refilled the pipeline for sales. The rent is still coming out because the agreement was with the company, not the person. So if the owner of the company, let's say the company is an LLC or S corp, right, which is its own separate entity from the person, if the owner passes away, that company is still alive. It's still paying bills. And if no one else, and here's the key for your listeners out there, and I can deep dive into this later, but if no one else is able to have legal authorization to access those funds or to run the company, to say it's going to be driven into the ground is an understatement. It will be drained, and then it will be taken over by the state that it's registered. And then you have to go to the state to buy it from the state. I'll end it here. So I'm in California, right? I think I said that. For those listeners who are in the United States, and maybe other countries that around the world, not really sure, but we have a Secretary of State for each state here. In California, if your listeners go up, search abandoned businesses. So I would search California abandoned businesses. And it's usually a Secretary of State page. Prosper, not kidding. There are dozens upon dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds of abandoned businesses that the owner might probably passed away or in other circumstances walked away from the business. But if they passed away and the family didn't want to step in and take over or properly diffuse the business, disperse it, sell it off, they've walked away from blood, sweat, tears, sleepless nights, long days, longer nights, and shorter years that owner built, and they've done nothing with it. So as owners, business owners, those listenings or those that plan to be, think kind of long and hard about what you're about to build through faith, through hard work, through blood, sweat, and tears, and make sure that those that you love and those that you provide for and support know exactly what you're doing, who you're doing it with, how much you're going to be making. Because if you're not here for some reason, they need to be able to have the instructions to appropriately disperse that business in those funds.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get off my preaching porch here, but that's a long talk, my good sir. But a
That's
lot of
a
good nuggets in there. If take a deep breath for you listeners out there. I know that was like really heavy right off the bat. They're like, holy cow, Andy, I don't even know you, man. Like, geez, Louise, buddy, come in hot and fast, brother. Yeah.
No,
But
no
that's
worries.
true. It is.
Thank you so much for obviously opening us up with that, because that sort of gives us, a cross section of the kind of stuff that you deal with and what it is that your life used to look like. But I'm just gonna take you back a little bit. You did mention that you are at that cusp of, you're not necessarily the older generation, and you're not necessarily the younger generation, the people that were born in that 1982, 83, 80 sort of four-ish timeline. They are still within the traditional side of way business was being run, yet the digital side of things was also coming up. And it's one of those things that I've heard a lot of people talk about. But you have been through two distinct timelines in the economic side of things. You did mention the financial downfall, 2008 and stuff like that, and also COVID. What has these times sort of taught you, about resilience?
Resilience trumps planning. And let me explain. You ever heard the phrase, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans? You ever heard that? Right? I think most of us have, right? If the best plans are laid by those of mice and men, right? Same
Mm.
sort of thing, right? So when plans fall through, like mine did in 2008, right? I was a double degree graduate. I was walking out with two bachelors, management information systems and international business. So I thought I was locked in, six figures, right? Easy, right? Walk on, six figures, 150K. That plan went up in flames within 2 weeks post graduation, right? So what do? Well, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? Sort of thing. Yeah, throw in your metaphors, analogies, ladies and gentlemen. You know where I'm going with. So when the plans that you lay, the plans that you have, the plans that you hope for, pray for, and so on, don't go the way that you want, and they usually don't, you have to get resilient. You do. You have to get tough. You have to say, okay, that didn't work, but I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. I'm going to get back up. You get knocked down 6, you get up 7, right? Mike Tyson has a saying, and I could do this all day long, but everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth, right? And then that plan goes away, right? I think in life, a majority of us have had that hit in the mouth moment, right? 2008 graduate for me, COVID, a little bit for me, for a lot of people, had to completely reset the way that they lived, the way that they planned, the way that they approached life. COVID changed the world. There's no argument against that, right? Did it change it in a bad way? There's a fair argument. A lot of us are now approaching life in a much more conscientious, deliberate manner, in that we might have maybe 3 packages of toilet paper instead of just 1 in our house, right? Maybe instead of a dime out of every dollar that we make, we're making it a quarter to save. You get the idea, right? And then as I could probably dive in, as we both can and everyone can, into the rabbit hole that is AI. The jobs that we thought were secure, not so much.
You know,
Not so much,
Andy,
right?
somebody told me, I don't know how you feel about this, but somebody told me if you look at half of the jobs that can now be done, maybe cheaper, better, faster by AI, they're
Mm-hmm.
also the kind of jobs that were deemed non-essential during the pandemic.
Yep.
If you notice, half of the jobs that were required,
Ooh.
not necessarily required,
Yeah.
most of
Right.
them are actually being overtaken by AI. But obviously, we can go into that a little
Yeah.
bit better,
Right.
because what I wanted was to really establish the why you aspect of it, because so many people that are in the financial realm of things would have just read a book and
Yep.
are out there now talking about principles in finance, but you actually experienced some of the toughest things that people undergo and
Yep.
actually experience. You did mention losing your 2 fathers,
Yep.
and sorry about that, and then you losing your job and having a baby come through at a time when you're not really expecting it, while the
Right.
pandemic is rearing its head and things like
Yeah.
that. Now, your job is to help families and business owners really reduce the risk and sort of build resilient and stronger financial foundations. And you've established to us that this is not from you having learned it by watching. You've actually lived it and
Correct.
experienced it yourself. Now, do you think you could genuinely help people the way you do today if you hadn't experienced any of this uncertainty yourself?
Short answer, no. Not in the degree that I provide the value now, right? If COVID had never happened, let's say if we could go back 26, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, 6 years now, if we could go back and erase COVID entirely, right? Whole chunk, 2.5 years, we were kind of quarantined, right? More or less. Where would the world be today? Where would we be today? Where would I be today? Where would you be today? Whatever, right? Like the what ifs, right? But it was during that experience of helping people through the tragedy and the heartbreak of losing someone and having to reshuffle life as they had to live it from there on. I strongly feel I wouldn't be where I am today doing this, because again, I experienced it. I just didn't read a book like you said. I was there. When you're handed a death certificate for a 20 something year old or 30 something year old from their parent, it hits a little different than someone who might have passed away from old age. It hits a little different. And maybe not, they didn't have a business or whatever, but you know, change the scenario. Now here I am, this advisor, consultant, if you will. I'm not really a coach. I'm not a big fan of that term, but consultant, and say, hey, you got your life insurance, you got your 401k, you got your stocks and mutual funds, and you got all this, all of your financial well-being, ribboned up and tied. Great, fantastic, awesome, congrats. Where does all that go if you're no longer here? What's the contingency? Who's paying the mortgage, right? Who's paying the dog to feed the dog? So on and so forth. If you're a business owner, you just doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and then some your responsibilities, liabilities, risk exposure, and so on. It's a simple fact. I have a family. I have 3 kids, wife, mortgage, the whole bit. I also have 2 companies, a growing third, and so on, that I'm taking on clients, expectations, promises, contracts to fulfill. That if I can't do that, what contingencies do I have in place? Life insurance doesn't pay that contingency. my investments don't pay for my promise to my clients that I would help them with their contingencies. What do you have in place that says, hey, look, if something happens to me, Mr. Client, Mrs. Customer, and I cannot fulfill our contractual obligation, this clause gets me out of it, right? Some people call it the get out of jail free clause or whatever. I call it the God clause, act of God clause, right? We've all heard that. In case of an act of God, good, bad, or otherwise, this removes my liability, my risk, my exposure to fulfilling the contract because XYZ happened, right?
Mm.
Or depending on your company, to your viewers, whatever they do and wherever they provide, if I'm not in this picture, talk to Jane, talk to Jerry, talk to Jennifer. They're my assistant managers, they're my executive assistant, they are my next in line, whatever, right? So it in a branch, in a bank branch, you have the manager, you have the assistant manager, and then it goes from there. There's always somebody that steps up. But if you're a single owner business and you run everything, you wear all the hats, you pull all the levers, push all the buttons, you know how things run better than you probably know the back of your hand, but nobody else does. Ladies and
Mm.
gentlemen, you're not building a business, you're building a liability.
Absolutely. And you did
Okay.
mention there's a graveyard of businesses that people can
Mm.
find, which you aptly called abundant businesses. And
Abandoned.
you,
Yeah,
yes, and you did
abandoned
mention
businesses. Yeah. Yep.
yes, and I think this is something a lot of people that are watching this would absolutely know for sure. Like if you don't do anything about your business right now, the people that are around you don't even know, how to switch on your computer to start off with and things of that nature because you've been doing it all by yourself and
Correct.
been building this by yourself. So the people that then come to see you, what is around them or what do they see that then triggers them to say, you know what, I think it's time to go see Andy because fish don't see the water that they swim in.
Sure. I usually say that if you've ever had a what if moment, we need to talk, right? I know I've had it. I'm 43 years old. I stopped counting how many what if moments I've ever had, right? You could be a 23-year-old and have what if moments. 13-year-old, you get the idea. But as an adult and as a family man, business owner, and so on, those what if moments come pretty frequently, I would say, right? And depending upon your mental stability, and I say that with love and respect, or your faith, as I do, I don't let it have the anxiety control as it used to. Okay. What if tends to be the trigger effect for anxiety. People wake up at 2 in the morning and cold sweat and they have to take a walk, or they get a tall glass of water, they breathe deeply, whatever, right? So if you've ever had a what if moment, that's where I come into play. Because in my personal opinion, anxiety is not the lack of the unknown future, it's the lack of control of the future. Now, that could segue into what you said in the beginning about me giving up control, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made, and I'll get into that for a second. But for clientele that you spoke of, yeah, I would say that, hey, look, if you're somewhere between a financial advisor who helped you with all your money and put it in the right place and investments and so on and so forth, you got your life insurance, everything's tied up really well, and you're thinking about going to a lawyer for all the legal stuff, the things that don't get covered by the investments, your mortgage, your car, your family, your businesses, and so on. I'm kind of that middle guy in the ground, right? I'm not a lawyer, and I just want to declare that real clear. Didn't go to school for it. Don't want to go to school for it. Don't need to know a lot of lawyers, like some of them, right? I even have some on my board of directors, but are probably very specific to their particular industry. From my experiences, I have the unique viewpoint that say, hey, before you go get that trust, which I'm a big advocate of, or before you go, sit down to $600 an hour lawyer, which is probably pretty average here in California. Let me give you a couple tips, tricks, and advice on maybe something you should consider before going that way. Because if you're a business owner or not a business owner, outside of your investments and life insurance and everything else, you still have probably a whole lot of assets, a whole lot of different things that you need to make sure that if you're no longer in the picture, whether permanently or temporarily, who steps up in that way to make sure that when you come back, if you're out temporarily, think surgery, that you don't come back to a pile of ash, you come back to a house that's still standing. If Prosper, do you have a pet?
Oh, we used to, but yeah, no, not
Not
anymore. Yeah.
anymore. Okay. I'm 2 dogs in, right? I very small dogs. If I and my family went on vacation, we'd hire somebody to come over and walk them and
Pet sit,
feed
yeah,
them and give them water and so on, right?
yes.
Because I'm a responsible pet owner. That's what you do. You have someone in place to make sure that the things that you care about are maintained in a sufficient manner. Your business, your life in general, but specifically your business should be treated in the same way, without question, from day one before you make your first dollar. And I'll
Mm.
preach that to the day I die because I've seen what happens when you don't. So,
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Now, a lot of people sort of think that maybe consulting means just you spitting advice. And like you have said, I'm not a lawyer or things of that nature, but you're that person in between, the lawyer and the finance people. But you are asking a question that somebody should ask themselves, which then tells me great consulting is actually about helping people ask better questions,
yeah,
which is what if, and so that people can actually see what's actually happening around them. But fish don't see the water that they swim in. All
right.
right. And sometimes people might think, oh, this is all right. It will get well. Rome was not built in a day. At
Mm.
what point should people now start looking at, wait a minute, now is the time to really buckle down and what if?
Well, you don't install a fire extinguisher after the house burns down. Okay, right? you, you don't put the fire repulsion system inside the building as a corner of it starting to collapse, right? What do? You put procedures, protocols, contingencies in place before there's a problem. You make it a molehill before you make it a mountain. Or as my grandma used to say, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Right?
Mm.
That goes way back. So some of your listeners are probably shaking their head. They heard that too, right? I'd rather take an ounce of semi not so great tasting medicine versus a pound of really nasty stuff, right? So it's not something, well, with COVID again, like again, reset the way that we live, reset the way a lot of my clients lived and so on, but they were reactionary to what happened, right? They reacted after somebody passed away. They reacted after their business collapsed, or so on and so forth, right? You have to be, to a degree, large degree, I would say, proactive, saying, hey, before this happens, let's put in a fire extinguisher in the house just in case something goes sideways. Before we go on vacation, let's make sure someone knows the code to the front door so they can take the dogs out and feed them and water them, so on, so we don't come back to not so pretty picture. Before I build this business and make 6-7 figures, let me make sure that this hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and sleepless nights doesn't go to waste in case something happens to me. Before I retire, Andy, can I sit down with you and make sure that my finances, my trust, my life is set up in a way that I leave more benefits than burdens for those that I love and care about? Andy, how does that work? What would that look like? And that's where I come in and pick.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sort of opening us up to that. Now, what sort of businesses are you talking about? Because most of these things, people think maybe I need to be far ahead in business or I should be
Mm.
now looking at retirement and things of that nature. Like, when can somebody reach out, Andy?
Uh, I get that a lot. I get that, Andy. I don't have enough money yet for it to make sense. Andy, my company's not big enough for it to really have an impact. Andy, I'm still 5 years out from retirement. Call me in 5 years. I get that, and I respect that. that's a not a good time. Let me talk to so on before I talk to you, sort of thing. And I get that. I'm like, great. While you're waiting, what happens if you don't make it to retirement? What happens if you don't make it to those six figures or seven? What happens if you're not here tomorrow? And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here for you and your listeners or anything, but we're not promised tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing anywhere written that you are guaranteed to wake up tomorrow morning. Sorry to put down the ugly truth, but that's what it is. And again, I'm not trying to breed anxiety. That's not the point. The point is to step back and make sure that, again, that those that you love, care about, support, and so on are left with more benefits than burdens. And if you're building a business that no one else can step up, step in, keep alive, close out, sell off, whatever, all those blood, sweat, and tears, long nights, missed birthdays, parties, whatever else that you've had to step away from to keep the business running goes down meaningless because it's not there to do what you needed it to do, which was to support those that you love and care about and so on.
Absolutely. So if somebody is watching this right now and they are obviously, intrigued about your story and what it is that you sort of help them with, what can they expect and what can they walk away with when you start working with them?
Sure. So we have a protocol which we call the Clear Protocol. All right, CLEAR. Right. It's a 5-stage examination, if you will, specifically for business owners, but individuals too, if you wish. And it goes. It's cash, legal, essentials, access, and relationship. As a business owner or as an individual, cash is what keeps the lights on, food on the table, roof over your head, the dog, cat fed, the goldfish fed, the gas in the car. Cash flow is blood flow. If you're the only one that controls the cash flow, whether it's sales calls, satisfying clients, closing out contracts, accounts receivable, accounts payable, whatever else, and you hold the key to the chest, aka bank account, and no one else can get to it or do what needs to be done to keep the business alive if you're not capable of doing so, it's a problem. Legal is is everything that gives or provides legal standalone, can hold up in court designations that limit your liability. So think S corp LLC versus sole proprietorship, right? Think which goes into access later, but trusts here in the United States, you could put a business in the trust. Hey, you can put just about anything in the trust most of the time, right? So how do you integrate that into your business? Standard operating procedures, legal, so on and so forth. Essentials, how do you turn on the computer? If someone had to walk into your office and be like, okay,
Where do we
first
start?
thing, I have no idea. Problem. If they don't have the password to your computer that controls everything, problem, right? If your essentials includes your pet and they don't know that your pet is half of a cup in the morning, full cup in the afternoon, and a half a cup in the evening, and they go full cup across the board, and suddenly the animal has indigestion and it's now a medical bill. Essentials. Do they know how to do, what to do, when to do it, why to do it, and in what way to do it so it doesn't fail? Access. If you have access but not authority, that's a problem. Just because you can have access to someone else's accounts because you have their screen name and username and password or whatever else does not give you the authority to do so. No. Doesn't. If you have authority but not access, that's a problem too. Okay. And then relationships. No man's an island. No woman's an island. We interact with people. We pay bills. The relationship you have with your cell phone is probably better than the relationship you have with most people these days. It's sad to say, but it is. Okay. Who are your relationships? Or what do you have relationships with? And how do they influence or affect the life that you live? And that can be everything from your electric bill and cell phone bill to your neighbor's kid who comes by and feeds the dog. who knows what to do about your life or in the aspects of your life that if you're no longer here or incapable of doing so, they can be communicated with, talked to, activated, whatever you want to call it, so that those things that you care about are taken care of in the way that you would want.
Absolutely, and thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
I think clarity trumps anything, especially in business, because when there's a lot of chaos and you
Mm.
just inject a bit of clarity in the process, it makes it super easy for people to understand what it is that you are doing. Like, I've heard that, those race car drivers,
Mm.
they literally have to look at where they want the car to go to instead of what's happening to the sidelines, because wherever they look, that's where the car goes. So if
Mm.
if they're not clear on the path they need to take, then obviously none of that is gonna sort of work out. Now, if people are looking to go from that chaos to clarity, which you are offering, where can they go to on the internet to connect with you, Andy, and find out more about how they can, yeah, know what's
So
next?
I'm on most socials, LinkedIn, right? I'm growing on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook a little bit. I'm not the greatest social media guy. I didn't come up with it. It's not my generation. I am not a influencer. Hey guys, Andy from SoCal. Like that's not me. I would rather take someone out to coffee or lunch or something in person, some type of authentic, non filtered or background or whatever interaction to get that kind of unbridled, unfiltered, fully authentic in person type of interaction. Now, yes, Zoom and Google Meets and all that stuff is what the world's at right now. And hey, some of my clients are across the country. You're on the other side of the world. Okay, like this is where we're at right now, and I have to just work with what we got, right? But they can find me on those pretty easily. And then aqualuxuryconsulting.com is there too. What I say about that, it's not about water, but it is about clarity, and we can all use a little bit more of each. So, you know, so those are probably the best places to find me. I do a presentation for an organization called SCORE here in the United States, SCORE. It is I want to say affiliation, but a subsidiary, if you will, of the Small Business Administration. And they provide business resources and mentors for up and coming business owners or business owners who are needing a little extra leverage to get to that next plateau, sort of thing. I am honored and do have the privilege of giving presentations on their platform about once a month on this exact thing. So they can see me on there. There are recorded episodes that are on their website. But I do have one layer on this month that I'm excited to do again. So
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can find their way and start exploring what it is that you can do. And talking about exploring, you tell us a bit about Expo. I mean, obviously, you did mention you love connecting with people and also meeting people in person because, most networking events are just about collecting business cards. If you walk into my office right now, we could play Una with all the business cards that I have. But yours feels like yeah, absolutely. It feels like you're building communities and more than anything else. What is the problem you're solving with this one?
So if Aqua Luxury Consulting is my passion, Micro Expo My City is my calling. Okay. And there's two different things, and there's a different, right? The consulting was bred from my experience in corporate America and what I did as a professional banker for many years. This was yeah, call it divine intervention or influence or whatever have you. And it's not as dramatic as I might be hinting to, but it did come probably in the best time of my life, and frankly in the best time of where we are as a entrepreneurial growing economy, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And what it started off was in last year near the holidays where I do put on networking events here in Southern California for a platform called Alignable. I'm one of their ambassadors here in Orange County, which I'm very grateful to be. And I put on networking events, like you mentioned, where people show up and handshake and meet new contacts and exchange business cards and maybe grab a drink or whatever have you. And it's a great time. And it lasts for about 2 hours. And you go home and hopefully those contacts turn into clients and so on and so forth, right? Doesn't always go that way, but it's pretty regular, right? Well, I wanted to add a little value, take it from an 8 to a 9, 9 to a 10 on these networking events. So I said, hey, instead of just bringing business cards, everybody, why don't you bring a sample of your business or info packet or some type of brochure? Bring in a little something more than just what a business card is and does, because those usually end up in the trash anyways at some point. Bring us something that really stands out, that brings a little punch to the event. And I had people come with samples, literally food samples of what they made. I had people come with full brochures of what they do, right? We were cranking it up. I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to crank it up a little bit more. So then the idea came to me. I'm like, well, why don't we just run a business expo? Single owner, business owner. I don't want to say small business expo because there is actually one out there, but it's a community business expo if you want to really label it, right? Just the local city community business economy, business leaders, your local chambers, something like that. We'll bring them in a centralized location, make the prices real cheap. So it's affordable, make it, like I said, the locale somewhere nearby so it's accessible. Everybody win, right? And through a little bit of a mental evolution of like, okay, let's just take a stab at this, I went ahead and ran it. And I ran 2 in the Q4 of last year. One in November, one in October, and then one in December. My October one, there was 3 people, myself and 2 others. So super grateful, right? I made $100, right? Holy crap! Excuse me, but that was exciting, right? And then I did it again in December. 12 people came in December, including myself. It went up 400%. I made $600, and it was at that point, Prosper, that it was like, dude, having an affordable, accessible community business owner expo trade show that's not niched out and it's not associated with any type of group or membership requirement or anything like that nature. Wow, this could work. It's a thing. Holy cow. And then basically the rest of December and majority of January was nothing but just straight prayers and, all right, God, I don't really have anything else, man. Like, is this it? Is this what we're doing? Is this the ark we're building? And in many ways, I feel like I'm a bit of a modern day Noah because I'm been given this and I'm building it little by little, right? And then trying to bring people with me. And I gotta tell you, Prosper, hand on the heart, hand on the Bible, ever since him and I came to agreement that, yep, this is it, there hasn't been more than an ounce of anxiety at all. Not kidding. Like, I'm not stressed about it. I sleep fine. I haven't made a single dollar, but I've had more conversations with more people about this accessible, affordable, local community business expo. And 99.9% of them says any when, where, and how much.
See, when something
Right?
comes from the heart, and I think this aligns with the Zig Ziglar statement that help enough people get what they want, you too will get that which you want and more.
Very nice. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it looks like you've made a really big comeback here, and you not only have managed to find something that actually sustains you, but something that also fulfills you in the works of the expo and things like that. I mean, the consultancy is there for the family, we all know that, and the 2 dogs. But with this expo, like you say, this is something that is much more of a fulfillment. Now, just imagine somebody who's watching this today. They probably lost their job, they probably lost their confidence, and they're just wondering whether to take their first entrepreneurial leap. What's the first thing that they should maybe start with that could actually put them in a better position right now?
First, if if someone's listening to this and they've gotten this far, right? We're about an hour in. And so if you're still listening, still here, thank you. I promise you it's going to get better. If you've lost your job 20 years, 10 years, six figures, right? The job that provides for everything within the last month, I need you to take a really deep breath on a 4 count, hold it for 6, and blow it out on 8. And you're going to do that like 3 times, because what they're feeling right now, especially if it's a recent change, is this heaviness in their chest that they can't breathe, that they can't provide, that what they were doing is no longer here. It's no longer a viable option, and they don't know what they're going to do next. Been there. It was not so much fun. So they need to give themselves some grace on that. All right. I went to the beach. I went fishing like within the first week after I got fired, right? Like I did what I wanted to do. I picked my kids up from school. I did all the things that I couldn't do in the 9 to 5. After you get through that initial realization that what you had is gone and what you worked for or tried to build up or get promoted through is no longer a viable option. And it might hold you for a month or 2 or 3 because you're digging into your resume, trying to get it out on every single job posting site out there. Like, been there, done that. You name it, I did it.
Absolutely.
You have to come to the realization that if that option is a viable, non-viable opportunity anymore at all, and you have to start from the skills, knowledge that you have, experiences that you have to build something from the ground up. There are a couple things, and I did the same. There are some AI prompts that you could put your resume through, and it will create literally almost step by step up to your first dollar based upon your skill set, knowledge, and experience, a brand new business with what your resume is. I did it. I ran through it. I actually have a copy. I can run people through it for them, totally free. Happy to do so. And what it does, Prosper, and here's the greatest value. It gives hope. It gives light in the darkness. You just need a little bit. You just need that what if this actually worked? What if I could suddenly be the boss, make the time, my time, so I could be with my kids more, my wife, my husband, my family more. I work on my time when I want to. Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a hard come up, right? It's a bit of a steep learning curve and it's awfully humbling, let me tell you. But it's way better than trying to slog through post after post, interview after interview, and getting turned down.
I
So
can imagine. And
right,
thank yeah. And I
right.
think what you've just done is you've given a lot of people permission to
Mm,
give themselves grace as to this is what it is. And more and more, the longer I'm talking to you, I'm actually realizing that to whom much is given, much is required. You literally had to go through what you went through, and whatever that career break that you sort of had, that was an interruption. That was actually an invitation, because had you
mm,
still been there, you probably wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. Now,
correct,
Andy,
100%.
I can't thank you enough for the work and what it is that you're doing for other people there. So thank you so much for spending the time
Yeah.
with me today.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure. Like I said, from one hemisphere to another, like this is crazy. I'm going to be rolling off of this for quite some time. To all your listeners and to all your subscribers, and please subscribe. Tell your friends. Come see Prosper, man. The guy's podcasts and everything is on fire. But to all the people that out there that are either starting a business midway through, near the end, or thinking about it, or going through, like we just talked about, that transition, whether they wanted it or not, which thousands of people are going through almost on a monthly basis. Not to get all preachy here, but sometimes the worst thing that can happen is sometimes the best thing that can happen.
Mm,
I lost my job and career, but that turned into being able to be here for my family more, seeing my kids grow up, making more money than I would have if I had stayed. I'm going to be 7 figures up in about 5 years. I'm going to be able to retire at 55
absolutely.
and have a legacy that will provide for generations to come. I
And
don't know if I could have done that in my previous life. In my previous life.
absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
So
thank Thank you so much. I think for those that are watching and listening, this was a very incredible conversation, and it totally wasn't about business. It was about trust. It was about, just taking that one more step and just really believing that you too can. And the fact that you're now building relationships and helping other people along the way is absolutely remarkable. So I viscerally believe in life, Andy. We're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. In order for us to live the best life that we need to live, like you say, you obviously are with your family and everything. You need to have learned, and you've learned all these lessons in person, and now you're just sending the elevator down to teach those that might not be clear enough.
Yeah,
Just giving them that hope that you're talking about, and it's not in the form of prompts or whatnot. It's just the fact that somebody sees them and hears them. And thank you for being that person.
absolutely.
All
We
right.
all deserve to be seen and heard, my friend. So it's good to see you, good to hear you, and let it not be the last time we do either. All right.
Absolutely, my man. Now, for those that are watching right now, if this conversation really encouraged you, or maybe inspired you, or maybe just reminded you that you're not walking on this journey alone, also just share this with somebody who might be needing to hear this message today. And I will put all the links that you can connect with Andy in the show notes below. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe, because in every episode, we'll be exploring powerful ideas that can actually help you build a happier and more meaningful existence. Until next time, I encourage you to live with purpose, learn continuously, and keep contributing that which you want and more. Bye for now.